I remember the vibration of my phone that night as vividly as the tremor of my own pulse. It was a quiet evening, too quiet. The apartment smelled faintly of her lavender candles and the pasta she had cooked before rushing out to meet friends. My phone screen glowed with her name. I need a break. Please don't contact me for a while. It was so cold. No emojis, no soft words. Just a digital guillotine. I sat there staring at the text. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Hundreds of words crowded my mind, but none of them felt right. In the end, all I wrote was, "All right, take care, 2 sentences. 4 words. It felt like lowering a coffin lid. For months, I had felt us drifting, but I hadn't expected this. She used to be the girl who couldn't go an hour without telling me some random thought or sending me a picture of a cloud that looked like a cat. She used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder, mumbling about our future. But lately, silence had crept into the apartment like a third roommate. Conversations became routine check-ins. Her eyes flicked at her phone more than at mine. Our dinners together turned into her scrolling, me chewing, both of us waiting for something unspoken to explode. I set the phone down, the weight of her words heavier than the device. My reflection stared back at me from the dark TV screen across the room. I didn't look like myself anymore. I looked like a man caught between hope and humiliation. And then, like a switch flipping, I felt something else. Resolve. If she needed space, she would get it, more than she asked for. I wasn't going to sit around like a ghost haunting our memories. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and pulled out my old duffel bag. One by one, I folded my clothes. Shirts that had once been ours because she borrowed them. Jeans she said made me look taller. I packed my camera, the one she had gifted me on my last birthday. I didn't know if taking it was right or wrong, but it was mine before it became a symbol. I moved quietly, almost reverently, like I was performing a ritual. I didn't want to wake the neighbors, but really, I didn't want to wake myself. On the desk, I placed an envelope. Inside, a letter, 8 handwritten pages I had poured out over the past week when I could sense this coming. It wasn't angry or pleading. It was simply the truth. How I had felt unseen. How her laughter now seemed like an echo of someone I used to know. How I'd been screaming silently while she scrolled. At the end, I wrote, "If you want to understand, read this. If you don't, throw it away. Either way, I'm gone." I took one last look around the apartment. The plants I'd watered. The couch where we'd made up after arguments. The kitchen where we had dreamed about recipes we'd never cook. All of it stayed. I walked out without slamming the door. My car felt colder than usual. I started the engine and drove without music. Just the sound of tires on wet asphalt. The city blurred by. Neon signs reflecting off puddles like fragmented memories. I had rented a small studio on the other side of town 2 days earlier. An escape hatch I'd built without admitting it to myself. It wasn't much. 1 window, 1 creaky bed, 1 lamp. But it was mine. That first night alone, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying everything. Our first date at the bookshop cafe. The way she once laughed so hard she spilled coffee on her dress. The promises whispered under blankets. I wondered when exactly we had stopped being us and become 2 people orbiting the same space, but never colliding. Morning came, and with it, a strange peace. My phone was silent. No texts from her. No missed calls. Just blankness. I went for a walk, bought a coffee from a shop she'd never been to, sat on a bench under a tree that didn't have our initials carved into it. For the first time in months, I felt like I was inhabiting my own life, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Every song on the radio felt like it had been written about us. Every couple I passed on the street looked like a version of what we used to be. At night, I'd find myself reaching for her out of habit, only to touch the cold side of the bed. 2 days passed. Still nothing from her. No response to the letter. No "why did you leave?" No come back. Just silence. And then, on the 3rd evening, there was a knock at my door. At first, I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened it, she was standing there. Her hair was messy, eyes red, cheeks streaked with tears. She was clutching the letter, crumpled and damp from her hands. "I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't do this. Please, can we talk?" My heart slammed against my ribs. I had imagined this moment, but in my fantasies I was strong, stoic. In reality, I was trembling. She stepped forward like she was afraid I'd close the door. "Please," she said again. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I looked at her. The girl I had loved. The girl who had asked for space. Now standing in the doorway of my exile, begging for words. And for the first time in months, I didn't know what to say. I didn't move. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to her face, the ragged rise and fall of her chest, the damp paper trembling in her fingers. The city noise outside faded until there was only the low hum of the fridge behind me and the wild rush of blood in my ears. "I shouldn't have come here," she whispered. But she didn't leave. I thought I could handle it. But I can't. I can't do this without you. I swallowed hard. Her words hit me like an echo from another life, one where we were still inseparable, still unbreakable. But now they were just syllables suspended between us, fragile and heavy. I stepped aside, opening the door wider. She hesitated for a second before slipping in, hugging her arms to herself as if she were cold. My studio suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were leaning in. She looked around, eyes scanning the plain furniture, the single coffee mug on the counter, the absence of us in this space. "You actually left," she said softly, as if she'd expected me to bluff. "You really left." I didn't answer. I just walked to the window and pulled the curtain closed. The sunset threw a stripe of orange across the floor like a wound. She set the letter on the table, smoothing it flat even though it was beyond repair. "I read it 3 times, she said. "Every word. I didn't know you felt like that." I turned to face her. "I told you, in small ways." I tried. Her chin trembled. I thought you were just stressed. I thought we'd bounce back like always." I laughed, not cruelly, but hollowly. "We've been living in a slow-motion collapse for months. You wanted space. I gave it to you, more than you asked for." She sat down on the edge of my bed, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. "I didn't want you to disappear," she murmured. "I just wanted to breathe. Everything was so loud. Work, family, us. I felt like I was drowning. And I felt like I was invisible," I said quietly, "like I was holding on to a ghost of us, while you drifted somewhere I couldn't follow." Her eyes met mine then. Red, wet, searching. "I don't want to lose you," she said. Silence filled the room. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full of everything unsaid. I sat across from her, leaning forward, elbows on my knees. "Do you want me?" I asked slowly. "Or do you just want not to be alone?" She blinked, stunned. "What?" "Because those aren't the same thing," I said. "Wanting me means wanting the hard parts too. The messy conversations, the nights when we don't click, the slow work of building something real, not just the comfort of having someone there." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers. For the next hour, words poured out of both of us. Ugly words, raw words, words that had been caged behind politeness and avoidance. She told me about the pressure at her job, the panic attacks she hid, the fear that she wasn't enough for me. I told her about the loneliness in our apartment, the way I felt like a placeholder in her life, the nights I lay awake rehearsing goodbyes. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes I did. Sometimes we both went silent, just breathing. When the storm of words eased, we were left staring at each other across a gulf that didn't feel quite as wide. "I'm sorry," she said at last, her voice barely audible. "I didn't realize what I was doing to us." "I'm sorry too," I said, for waiting until now to say what I needed. She reached across the small space between us, fingers trembling. I hesitated, then let her hand touch mine. It felt both familiar and foreign, like returning to a house after it's been renovated. "I don't expect you to just forgive me," she whispered. "I don't even know if we can fix this, but I needed to see you, to tell you I want to try." I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine. Part of me wanted to pull her close, to bury my face in her hair and pretend none of this had happened. Another part of me wanted to stay right there on the edge of the bed, with honesty between us instead of illusion. Trying, I said slowly. Means both of us showing up. Not running, not hiding, not texting instead of talking, she nodded quickly. I know. Please just give me one more chance to show you. Outside, a car horn blared. Someone laughed on the street. Life went on, indifferent to our little drama. I squeezed her hand gently, then let go. I don't know yet, I admitted. I don't know if we can rebuild this. But I'm here. I'm listening. That's all I can promise tonight. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded, wiping at them clumsily. We sat like that for a long time. No grand declarations, no cinematic music. Just two people with their damage laid out like open suitcases. Later, I made tea for both of us. She curled up on the bed, knees drawn to her chest, watching me as if afraid I'd vanish. I handed her the cup and sat beside her. Steam rose between us like a fragile truce. Do you remember our first trip? She asked softly. Which one? The cabin by the lake. You forgot the matches and we had to eat cold beans. I chuckled despite myself. You said it was romantic. It was, she said. Her eyes were distant but softer now. We were so broke, but we were happy. Yeah, I said. We were. The night deepened. We didn't solve everything. We didn't erase the months of silence or the letter still lying on the table like a scar. But something had shifted. We were talking. We were present. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of what we used to be. Not a spark of nostalgia, but a small, stubborn flame of possibility. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Whether she would stay or go, whether I would forgive or move on. But I knew this. The story wasn't over yet. That night she didn't go back to our old apartment. She stayed curled up on my bed, not touching me, not crying anymore, just breathing slowly as if afraid to wake from a fragile dream. I sat in the armchair by the window, watching the city lights blink in and out of existence like a Morse code I couldn't decipher. Sleep came late for both of us. When dawn crept in through the blinds, pale and hesitant, I found her still awake, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Good morning, she whispered, like she was testing the word on her tongue. I nodded. Morning. We didn't reach for each other. We didn't kiss. We didn't pretend. We just existed in the same small space. Two hearts still beating but out of sync. I brewed coffee while she sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her phone like a lifeline she didn't know how to use anymore. When I handed her a mug, she murmured, "Thanks," without looking up. "We need to talk," I said finally. She nodded, setting the mug down, wrapping her arms around herself. I know. I can't go back, I said. Not to how things were. Not to waiting for you to notice me. Not to being a ghost in my own life. I don't want that either, she said quickly. I don't. I've been so scared of losing myself, of losing you, of everything. Her eyes flicked up to mine. When I texted you, I thought you'd fight for me. I thought you'd argue, show up at my job, something, but you didn't. You just said, take care. And then you were gone. I exhaled slowly. You wanted space. I respected that. I'm done trying to convince someone to stay. She flinched like the words were a slap. I didn't realize how much I was taking you for granted, she said. I didn't realize that by asking for space, I was pushing you out of my life entirely. Silence again. Outside, a siren wailed, then faded. What do you want now? I asked. Her lips trembled. I want us, she said. I want to fix this, but not the way it was. I want to be present, to listen, to work, to actually build something with you instead of assuming it's just there. I stared at her for a long moment. Her hands were shaking. Her hair was a mess. She looked like someone who had been running through storms, not someone who had walked out of my life with a neatly typed text message. I don't know if I can, I said quietly. Part of me wants to believe you. Part of me doesn't trust this moment. We've been here before, saying the right things, promising change. She slid off the bed and onto the floor in front of me, sitting cross-legged like she used to when we were students. When life was ramen noodles and shared headphones, she took my hands, her palms warm and trembling. I'm not promising it'll be easy, she said. I'm promising I'll show up, even when it's hard. especially when it's hard. Her eyes shone, not with tears now, but with something steadier. "You're not the only one who wrote a letter," she said, pulling an envelope from her bag. It was sealed, my name on it in her looping handwriting. "I wrote this last night. Before I came here, it's everything I couldn't text. Everything I've been too afraid to say." I took the envelope, feeling its weight like a small bird in my hands. I didn't open it. "Not yet. I'll read it later," I said. She nodded. "Okay." We sat there for a while, hands linked, the city waking up around us. "Do you remember?" she said softly. "That night on the bridge? When we made up after our first big fight?" "Yeah," I said. "We threw our old fight into the river." "We should do that again," she said. "Not literally, but we should let the old version of us go, start something new." Her words landed somewhere deep inside me, in the place where my anger and my love were tangled together. "I don't know if we can," I said honestly, "but maybe we can try." She smiled then, a small, uncertain thing, but real. "Trying is all I'm asking." I opened the window. Cool morning air washed into the room, carrying the scent of rain and fresh bread from a bakery down the street. For the first time in months, it felt like I could breathe. "Okay," I said finally. "We try, but we do it differently. We talk, we don't run. We don't wait until everything breaks." She squeezed my hands. "Deal." We didn't hug right away. We didn't kiss. We didn't pretend we'd solved everything. We just sat there, two people with scars, two people choosing, tentatively, deliberately, to reach across the distance instead of letting it widen. Later, as she left to pick up some of her things, I stood at the window watching her go. She glanced back once, offering me that same small smile. I didn't know what our future would be, but I knew that whatever happened, I had stopped being a ghost in my own story. I sat down at the table, opened her letter, and began to read. Her handwriting spilled across the pages, messy, urgent, full of confessions and apologies and memories. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magic, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. The kind of hope that doesn't erase the past, but uses it as soil for something new. The kind of hope that isn't a promise but an invitation. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and set it beside my coffee. The sun broke through the clouds, lighting up the room. Maybe we would make it. Maybe we wouldn't. But at least now, whatever happened next would be a choice, not a drift. And that, I realized, was already a kind of freedom.